Fuck it. Trying a new mic out. It's not going to work, so who fucking cares? I guess I need a wire, a special headphone jack, not just a regular 3.5 millimeter. It looks like the wire or the male part that goes into the microphone and the male part that goes into the adapter for the iPhone. It's got to be two separate types of male connectors. I'll have to look at a video and see. So I'm just testing out what the shit I'm going to be talking about. I have no clue what I'm going to be saying. Just, I guess, stuff that comes to my mind. So right now I'm headed to the gym. Try to make my tits bigger. So what's new? Well, yesterday I started Wellbutrin. I had Wellbutrin when I was in my early 20s. I was just in a funk, and I went to a psychiatrist, and they suggested that I try Wellbutrin out. And it worked really well for me, well enough to actually get off of it. So that was a good thing. So I was on it for about 8 months, and Doc and I were talking, and she said that I could start weaning off of it, and I've been great ever since. And the other day, I had a call with a psychiatrist, and I was having a hard time focusing, and my mind's going in 25 different directions. And what I was hoping to get a prescription for was Provigil or modafinil. So I heard it can help with focus, but I guess the only way you can get a prescription for that is if you have narcolepsy, which I don't, so I get that. But she had suggested that Wellbutrin can be used to help ADHD symptoms. So we're starting off with a low dose of Wellbutrin. Since I've had it before and didn't have any negative side effects, we're going to see what happens if we try that. See if I can improve focus. I've been really diving into nootropics lately, like stuff that makes you, I don't want to say limitless, but stuff that can help you focus. And for a while, shoot, I'm talking 2007 to 2014, I mean, stimulants was where it was at for me. 5-6 cup of coffees a day, 2 5-hour energy drinks, Monster energy drinks in between that, hardly drinking any water. Buddy, that is not good. My blood pressure was so high, when I would sneeze, I would see stars. So, I cut it down to only caffeine, and for a while, yeah, 4 or 5 cups of coffee a day, not a problem. I would sprinkle in a couple of espressos in there too, and then I'd say about 3 months ago, you know, my wife and I had an agreement that she would not make as much, she would not make a whole pot of coffee. She would make half a pot of coffee and we would split it. So that's been really good. You want to talk about a game changer when it comes to getting a full night's sleep. Not having caffeine in the afternoon was a game changer in getting some sleep. If I get up for whatever reason, I can easily go back to bed. But the drawback is I have a feeling the caffeine maybe covered up some of these symptoms where I'm really not able to focus a lot. Maybe it's adrenal fatigue, and I don't know if that's a thing or not. But I've just been struggling keeping focus, and the only way that I was able to keep focus is if I just drink a whole bunch of coffee. So I'm trying Alpha Brain. I've tried it before, was okay, just a little bit too expensive back when it first came out for me to afford. Now that I can afford it consistently, I started back up, and I like it. I can feel, I don't get jittery. My heart isn't racing. I don't feel like I got high blood pressure. I actually just got it checked recently, and it's the lowest it's ever been. So that's kind of what I'm working on. I'll keep you guys posted on how the Wellbutrin is doing for me. But you know, second day, I don't really noticing anything from it. But I think it takes a while for they call it the plasma concentration to get to a certain level where you're always getting the effects. So it's Wellbutrin SR, which is the sustained release. I think that provides, if I'm not mistaken, and I know in the comments, correct me if I'm wrong, that SR tries to keep a steady release of it into your bloodstream, so there's no peaks and valleys with the amount of it in your bloodstream. So I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah, so there's like, you know, as far as nootropics go, I mean, you could, I guess, make your own blend. It seems like a lot of it has to do with dopamine, and Wellbutrin actually affects dopamine as well, from what I understand. It's also a non-stimulant. They use it as a non-stimulant form of ADHD control, and it has the least effects on your libido and sex drive. In fact, if someone is on SSRIs, is it serotonin retake inhibitors, they give them Wellbutrin to help bring their sex drive back. I don't need any help getting my libido back up. I just didn't want it going down. You know, while I was looking for nootropics, there's like 3 brands that really stuck out to me, and I've only tried Alpha Brain. You know, there's Alpha Brain Bionic, Mr. Joe Rogan. There is Jocko's got one called, Jocko Williams got something called Go. I've never tried that. And then the guy, More Plates, More Dates, I think is what his channel is. He's got something called Gorilla Mood, I think. It's right. Yeah, that's what it's called. I've heard good things about that. And I'm just curious for you guys who have tried all 3 and into that nootropics, what your thoughts were on them. So I find it interesting that, you know, there's stuff we can do to try to enhance focus. Yeah, so right now I am on my way to the waste management, like a landfill, to get rid of my glass trash. So bottles of beer, pickle bottles, wine bottles, everything glass. I'm here to throw that out. And then again, I'm going to be hitting the gym. You know, I moved out to the south from Chicago way back. I've been living in the south for, shoot, I'd say it's going to be coming up on 20 years here soon. I still feel like, as you can tell from my previous videos, I'm a Chicago guy. I still feel like I still call Chicago home. You know, anytime we pack the kids to go back to Chicago, we always say, hey, yeah, we're going to go back home. I don't know what my kids think about that. They're born and raised in the South, so it's different. They don't have Southern accents. I love Southern accents. I've just gotten so used to it that I feel comfortable around it. I remember talking to one of the sales managers that I used to work with, and I remember we were talking about, you know, the difference in how I perceive people when I'm in the South versus the difference on how I perceive people when I'm in the North. And one of the things that kind of came out of that conversation is, you know, the sales manager grew up in the South. I grew up in the North. And when I go back home, I can kind of look at somebody and piece them together. I mean, I know that I can look at that person and go, okay, maybe not, maybe more than look, maybe I can just listen to a few sentences and I can already tell you what side of town he's from, probably where he went to school. Maybe I can tell you a little bit about his personality really quickly, based on a few sentences. Down here, because I haven't grown up down here, and really down here this whole time it's been an adult life and I've been working. But down here, I'm starting to get the hang of it, but still very difficult. Like, I can't tell where you're from. I can tell you have a Southern accent. Now, interestingly enough, I can tell the difference between a Southern accent if they're from Alabama. I can tell the difference between a person that's from Mississippi, Tennessee, Alabama, South Carolina. South Carolina is really distinct, but I can tell the difference between the two. Whereas when I first moved down here, it all sounded the same. Kind of like, you know, Chicago and New York accents may sound the same if you're not from the North. Whereas we in the North can tell the difference. Oh, well, that guy's in the East Coast. That guy is more Minnesota or Wisconsin. That guy's more Chicago. You can pick up on those differences. In the South, you know, under that little Mason-Dixon line, it was hard for me to separate that out. I thought that was pretty interesting. But yeah, I love it. I love it down here. It reminds me of growing up in Chicago. Now, I didn't grow up downtown. I grew up on the west side. And when I was growing up, I mean, it was still considered, a smaller community. It wasn't like it is today where there's condos and apartments everywhere. We lived on a regular block. There were some parts that had, open land. Not so much anymore. But that's what it reminds me of down here in the South. There's still a lot of open land. And you know what? You can find a bunch of open land in Illinois. You just have to get further and further away from the city. That's how that works out. But yeah, I love it. I love the pace down here. They're bringing some really, really good restaurants down here. That I thought was pretty tight. Sushi. I got addicted to sushi before I moved to the South. And for a while, it was really hard to find a good sushi joint. But even down here, it's getting big and popular. I heard something the other day, speaking of sushi, that I thought was pretty interesting. I heard that if you wanted to get some really fresh sushi, that Kentucky is a place to go to get some really fresh sushi. And in my head, that doesn't make any sense. Comment below if you ever heard that before, if you can tell me any validity to that. they're telling me that the reason that Kentucky, if you wanted to get really fresh sushi, is because Kentucky has a hub where a lot of international flights come in for fresh food. Maybe that's the case. I don't really know the meaning of it, but I've heard a couple of people tell me that. I think that's the answer, but if someone in the know can confirm that, that'd be great. I hate to be telling people lies. Well, I guess they're not open today for me to take my bottles to, so I guess it's off to the gym. So I've been on keto for a while, and one of the things that I hate is I can't eat regular sushi. I have to have sashimi instead. Or I've been lucky enough to live not so far away from a sushi joint that they serve sashimi, but what they also do is they serve regular rolls. They don't serve nigiri, the bed of rice with the piece of fish on top. They do serve that, but the way they're making it for me is instead of using like the sushi rolls with rice and seaweed, they just take away the seaweed and rice and they use cucumber peels, which I thought was pretty interesting. So look at a regular sushi roll. Let's say you want, a spicy salmon, which is probably one of my absolute favorite sushi rolls, a spicy salmon. Salmon itself is probably my favorite piece of raw fish. I love it. Second is tuna, and then squid is probably my third. And there's probably a whole bunch like yellowtail that I'm probably forgetting too, but I would put yellowtail under tuna. But for sure, spicy salmon's my favorite. And instead of having your spicy salmon in a roll of rice and seaweed, the guy just actually rolls out cucumber, and it's a big cucumber roll that he makes and puts my spicy salmon in there. So really grateful for them to do that, and it's a good low carb way to get your sushi. It's awesome. If you see any rolls on the sushi menu that you go to that have a cucumber peel for it, chances are they can do that for other sushi rolls as well. So just be on the lookout for that, or just ask the server. I have been dreaming since I moved out to the south about getting a huge plot of land. In Chicago, we never had that. Even when we moved out to the suburbs, it wasn't really a whole bunch of land. But, as you're in it, when I moved to the south, I got introduced to gun ownership. I got introduced to a slower way of life. I got introduced to thinking more about like a work-life balance instead of work. And I'm not saying one's better than the other. I just like that speed of, hey, set yourself up, work hard, but you also got to have some playtime. You also got to be able to relax. You got to be able to spend time with the family, which is an important part. So this whole thing with maybe getting some land ties into that, because with a bunch of land, oh wow, four-wheelers, dirt bikes, hunting, target practice, building a big shed. I'd love a pole barn, maybe a few animals, but I am just like riveted with just getting some land and building whatever I want on it. What else am I looking at? I have been looking at trying to buy some rental property here for a year. And I've been focusing on working on what's called my buy box, which is a set of criteria that I put for my rentals. and studying a certain area. I'm not ready to divulge what that area is, but in time it'll come. I'll keep you guys posted on any updates with rental properties. But it's been tough with the rates being so high, getting anything to cash flow. But even then, in the area that I'm looking at, although they cash flow, one of the rules that I have in place is, if I'm going to buy a property, or two rules I have in place. If I'm going to buy a property, A, it has to cash flow on day one. That's the first rule. Paying for a property is not what I'm interested in. I don't even take appreciation into account. Appreciation is kind of like icing on the cake. Most of the time it's going to happen. If it does happen, great. If it doesn't happen, I don't care. I'm not interested in that. I'm just worried about cash flow. The second thing I want to make sure of that I'm doing is making sure that for what I buy the house for, or buy the property for, that it cash flows, my cash on cash yield is better by a certain amount than the average cash on cash yield for the area that I'm looking at. That's been really tough. I was expecting stuff to slow down a little bit and buyers to drop, or sellers to drop their prices, because there's a looming recession. And I say that in quotes because we might be in one right now, or the Fed might get their wish. The Fed might actually achieve a soft landing, so who knows? But all that fear, I was hoping that I wouldn't have to be fast to it. Meaning, there's not a lot of people, a lot of other people that are wanting to buy properties. I figured also with the high interest rates that people would be less apt to purchase a property. And boy, am I wrong. The area that I'm looking at hasn't slowed down. There's not a lot of properties. There's some properties sitting around, but the offers I'm making to make it viable to me, people aren't taking it. So there really isn't any pain or any need to sell. And the ones that do closely fit the criteria are getting sopped up really fast. So it may be that I have to go back to speed and making offers on properties that just hit the market. And in some cases, properties are even higher than what the sellers are asking for. So I just got to do the work. I don't want to force a property, right? I don't want to fall in the FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. I don't want to be like, hey, I'm not going to get this. I'm only going to get this property even though it doesn't make sense to me and my certain rules, because I just need to buy a property. I think that'd be silly. I think I'd be putting myself in a big world of hurt. I don't want to do that. I want to follow my criteria, and then when I find it, attack it. And if I don't get it, I don't get it. But I don't want to get a property that I know isn't going to make sense for me, or that I have to convince myself to take. It's either yes, it falls into my criteria, or no, it doesn't. I don't want to make any concessions. So I'm coming up on my gym now. I don't know. I'm going to put this out there. We'll see how many views it has. This is a different format than my normal format. I know I do shorts. That's kind of like what I've been trying to focus on, is shorts. They're silly and stupid. Sometimes it might have a serious content. Sometimes it's just me being a jackass and being dumb. So I figured I'd try this too to supplement that and see if I get any views. My first one, so please judge. Please take that into account in the comments. I know I suck. trying to get better, my very first one. And we'll see how this turns out. If I know the delivery's bad, that's not a question. I know I got to work on getting a better mic. I'm going to get a lavalier mic to help with the sound a little bit better. I'm trying to get rid of the road noise, and you know, I got an old truck, so it probably has a lot of road noise that's creeping in to the sound, and I know sound is a really big effect. But I don't know, if you want to hear me just ramble and the content's okay, just the delivery's got to be better, please let me know. I'm always open to learning. I'm always open to criticism. I suck at a lot of shit, but if you never do, you never get better. How about that? If you never do, you never get better. So this is me doing. As shitty as it is, I'm just making an attempt. Alright guys, we'll see you soon.